This is the story of Angela, a proud and feared woman whose life in the village was ruled by arrogance, mockery, and cruelty. She had a loving husband, Johnson, and flaunted her pregnancy as a symbol of superiority, believing nothing could touch her. But when she insulted a mysterious old woman known for her dark power, her life took a terrifying turn. In this folktale, we witness how pride can summon consequences beyond imagination, how arrogance can destroy everything one holds dear, and how humility is often learned through suffering. Angela's journey is one of torment, shock, and ultimate realization, a story that will grip your heart and leave you questioning the power of words, actions, and unseen forces. Angela moved through the village with a sway in her hips, a smug smile stretched across her lips, radiating arrogance that clung to her like perfume. Every eye turned in her direction, not from admiration, but from a mixture of fear, jealousy, and irritation. Mothers pulled children closer, wives lowered their heads, and men averted their gaze, all silently whispering about her reputation. She thrived on this tension, sensing power in every envious glance, interpreting scorn as admiration, misunderstanding caution for reverence. Her pregnancy, enormous and perfectly round, became her crown, a symbol she wielded with calculated cruelty. "Some people will never know this blessing," she would say with a mocking tone, rubbing her belly for dramatic effect whenever she passed by struggling women. Those who lacked children, who bore the weight of empty arms in silent rooms, became her targets. She mocked their tears, belittled their pain, and drew satisfaction from their discomfort. Mothers who spent decades longing for life inside them found themselves trembling in her presence. Young wives who miscarried hid behind curtains. Old women who silently prayed for grandchildren swallowed their bitterness, silently, all under Angela's gleaming stare. She moved without apology, unconcerned with kindness, generosity, or humility, enthroned in her own arrogance. Even nature seemed to bend for her. The sun gleamed brighter. When she walked past, birds avoided her, and the wind whispered approval only she seemed capable of hearing. She reveled in it, laughing at those who had less, glorifying herself in her beauty, youth, and most of all, the life growing within her womb. Inside her modest compound, the tension grew thicker than the tropical humidity. Her mother, frail and worried, approached her one morning with trembling hands and eyes swollen from sleepless nights. "Angela, you must change," she pleaded softly, voice laced with desperation. Pride has a way of breaking even the strongest. People will not always tolerate cruelty, not even family. Remember kindness. Angela tilted her head, her long dark hair brushing her shoulder, and smiled with condescension. "Mother, I am beyond ordinary, beyond caution, beyond judgment. Let the village speak. Let them envy. Let them whisper. None of it affects me." Each word dripped with superiority. She refused acknowledgement, refusing advice, refusing the gentle wisdom that had saved countless souls before her. Days before, her husband, Johnson, a man calm, patient, yet increasingly frustrated, had warned her repeatedly. "Angela, arrogance kills hearts," he said one evening, gripping her hand with care. "Mocking women, insulting those weaker than you, it will bring ruin. I love you, but you must listen." Her laughter echoed through their small home, bouncing off wooden walls, drowning his caution. "Johnson, your warnings are unnecessary. This child carries me beyond fear. Watch, learn, understand. You will see, one day, people will bow to me, or at least tremble before me, just as I do before nothing." His face tightened, eyes reflecting a storm barely contained, but he did not argue. Arguments with Angela never ended. They never started on equal footing. Her pride was impenetrable, a wall too tall, too broad, too certain. Villagers murmured whenever she appeared in the dusty streets, whispers weaving into the air like smoke, curling through alleyways, entering homes, threading through kitchens where meals went cold, clattering pots abandoned as women paused mid-chore. "That woman," one mother said quietly, brushing her young son's hand off her sleeve, "she has no mercy. She laughs at tears. Her heart is hardened. She carries her child as a weapon." Another whispered, "It is not just a baby. It is pride itself. It will teach lessons, mark lives, and punish fools." Angela overheard fragments sometimes, smiling quietly as if pleased by the rumors, misreading fear for admiration once more. Her cruelty had a rhythm, a cadence perfected over years, practiced, rehearsed. She mocked a neighbor's inability to provide, laughed at widows' struggles, and boasted about her own success, wealth, and youth. Men whispered complaints but kept distance, while women offered polite nods to avoid confrontation. Children avoided her path entirely, sensing something unnatural in her energy. She cultivated this aura deliberately, perfected her sneers, flaunted her swollen belly, like a banner declaring victory, power, and untouchable superiority. Every movement screamed dominance. The snap of her sandals, the sway of her hips, the tilt of her chin, the gleam in her eyes. Those who once admired or even tolerated her now feared being caught in her gaze, paralyzed by pride, too grand to respect ordinary boundaries. Even as she strutted along the marketplace one sun-scorched afternoon, baskets clinking on her arms, vendors lowering their voices at her approach, Angela radiated defiance. She singled out women hauling heavy loads, laughing at their fatigue, ridiculing the shape of their bellies or the emptiness of their arms. She threw remarks carelessly about age, failed pregnancies, weak marriages, and faded beauty. The crowd recoiled, whispers turning to mutters, mutters turning to prayers, prayers turned to quiet curses hidden behind closed doors. Angela noticed none of it, not the stares sharpened by disdain, not the fearful children hiding behind mothers, not the trembling elders who once adored her. Each insult, each snicker, each boast elevated her in her mind, solidified her invincibility. Yet, as she turned a corner to leave the marketplace, the air shifted slightly colder despite the blazing sun. An old woman brushed past her basket accidentally, and Angela erupted immediately, words sharper than daggers. "Watch where you are going, witch? Can't you see a queen passes by? Are you blind, deaf, or foolish?" She jabbed her finger, rubbed her enormous belly, and laughed, eyes glinting with arrogance. The old woman stood motionless, gaze piercing, silent as though holding the weight of centuries. Then she whispered, barely audible, "What you carry will teach you humility." Angela scoffed, laughter bouncing across sunlit walls, dismissing the words entirely. She strutted off, mind full of pride, unaware that the seed of a curse had already been planted. Only the air had changed, heavy, thick, charged, though she believed it to be imagination, heat, fatigue, or her own brilliance. She turned, smirking over her shoulder, leaving Yuka in a haze of dust and quiet, unaware the first threads of a curse had already wrapped themselves around her prideful heart. By evening, Angela returned home, the village fading behind her as night painted the horizon with dark strokes. She carried her arrogance like a crown, entering the compound with authority and flair. Johnson watched quietly, hands resting on the kitchen counter, eyes narrowed. "Angela, you met someone today, didn't you?" he asked, cautious, calm, or recoiled in the tone. She laughed, spinning toward him, arms flaring like wings. "Yes, I did." And nothing remarkable occurred. She brushed against my basket, muttered something unintelligible, and moved along. "The world bows, Johnson. Even this village trembles before the greatness I carry." He took a step closer, brows furrowed, voice softer but firm. "Words hold power, Angela. Do not ignore caution. Some warnings are not meant to be laughed at." She scoffed, placing her hands dramatically on her belly. "Caution is for the weak. Warnings are for the fearful. I am neither. The child grows within me as proof of my supremacy. Nothing will touch me." That night, she slept lightly, tossing and turning, unaware of shadows lingering, of whispers threading through corners, of something unseen shifting with each heartbeat. Her dreams were filled with laughter and mockery, echoing the insults she hurled throughout the day, but underneath the humor, a faint ripple of unease pressed against her mind. She dismissed it immediately, confident, untouchable, immortal in her arrogant stock. The following days brought subtle, inexplicable changes. At first, a twitch, a sudden thump inside her womb that jolted her awake, but she laughed, attributing it to normal fetal movement, to exhaustion, to imagination. Then, vibrations stronger, more insistent, thrummed within her belly, unnatural, irregular like an animal trapped, thrashing against invisible walls. She screamed once, clutching herself, but the sensation faded as quickly as it began, leaving only confusion, curiosity, and a flicker of fear she buried beneath pride. Villagers noticed subtle shifts too. Shadows lengthened in her presence, animals avoided her path. Even the wind seemed hesitant to stir near her. Yet she moved with the same arrogance, spoke with the same scorn, laughed with the same cruelty, insisting all was normal, insisting she was untouchable. Every step she took threaded the curse deeper into her body. Every insult amplified its reach. Every sneer bound her to the consequences she refused to acknowledge. And in the silence of the night, long after she slept, the first whispers of the old woman's prophecy hummed faintly in the air, circling her compound, vibrating through walls, carrying the promise of lessons yet to be learned, a truth she would soon be unable to ignore. Angela's days began to unravel in ways impossible to ignore. Movements inside her womb shifted violently, flailing, twisting, writhing like some trapped creature desperate for release. Each thump against her insides resonated painfully, a rhythm alien and terrifying, yet invisible to all observers. Doctors examined her repeatedly, probing, measuring, scanning, their faces registering confusion, concern, disbelief. Everything appears normal, one whispered, shaking his head, glancing at colleagues with unspoken tension. Yet Angela knew her body betrayed her, each night amplifying terror. She screamed into pillows soaked with sweat, clutching herself as the walls of her small room seemed to quiver with every unnatural thump. Sleep became impossible, even rest brief and fragmented, leaving shadows to crowd her thoughts, nightmares to weave themselves across ceilings, and her mind to spiral with both denial and creeping fear. Her husband, Johnson, paced the floors, his calm demeanor faltering under the weight of frustration, worry, and helplessness. He offered comfort, words, hands pressed her trembling back, yet she waved him off, declaring herself strong, untouchable, invincible. Friends, once jovial, neighbors once curious, now avoided the compound entirely. Children scattered whenever she appeared, whispers followed her path like ghosts, and eyes, wide and fearful, traced her every movement. No one dared approach, no one dared question, all sensing the growing tension, the unnatural energy radiating from her swollen belly. Humiliation crept alongside the terror. Vendors refused service, neighbors whispered harsh judgments, elders muttered prayers into cups of water, and women crossed streets to avoid her gaze. Angela, proud and dismissive, misconstrued avoidance as fear, reverence as admiration, mocking those who hid their discomfort. "See," she bragged to Johnson one evening, voice dripping arrogance. "Even the village trembles beneath my presence. They bow without understanding why. They fear me because I am destined for greatness." Yet every thump, twist, twitch inside her abdomen whispered a different truth, one her mind refused to comprehend. She attempted normalcy, attending markets, visiting friends, laughing at minor misfortunes, flaunting her ever-growing belly, tossing casual insults at anyone daring to cross her path. Each interaction, however brief, only tightened the invisible chains forming within her, the subtle yet undeniable curse Yucca had unleashed, threading itself deeper, layer upon layer, shaping agony invisible yet unrelenting. Her own mother, once hopeful and protective, now trembled at her daughter's presence, seeing her transform from prideful woman into something simultaneously awe-inspiring and horrifying. Weeks turned into months, and months edged into years. Angela's body bore the weight of unnatural strain, spine bending, shoulders drooping, muscles aching constantly under the relentless pressure of an impossible pregnancy. Doctors shook their heads at each appointment, unable to reconcile the physical changes with medical reality. Panic mingled with anger, often erupting in sharp words, violent gestures, and screams that echoed through narrow streets. Villagers whispered curses softly at first, escalating to prayers of protection, offerings of oil and herbs, silent hope that the woman who once mocked life would somehow be spared the worst. Angela ignored all warnings, laughter rattling through empty rooms, mocking anyone who dared question her. She walked through her home like a queen trapped in her own palace, each step a proclamation, each motion a defiance of forces she refused to acknowledge. Yet beneath the bravado, fear seeped slowly, quietly, like water through cracks in stone. Nights were worst. The flailing, twisting, thrashing inside became louder, sharper, sometimes accompanied by unidentifiable sounds, cries, or beats impossible to explain. She cried into her hands, screamed into empty rooms, and yet by day, no one could see the struggle, only the spectacle of her swollen form and the arrogance she wielded like armor. Isolation became complete. Friends vanished, laughter ceased, greetings faded to silence. Markets avoided her path, animals scattered at her presence, even birds seemed to turn elsewhere mid-flight. Johnson attempted consolation, patience fraying with each violent thump, each scream, each whispered threat of something inside beyond comprehension. Her mother, frail from stress, wandered corridors muttering prayers, fearing what pride had wrought. Angela herself oscillated between denial, rage, and quiet terror. Moments of reflection punctuated arrogance, yet pride snapped her back into disbelief. 5 years passed with Angela's life unraveling in slow, excruciating detail, each day heavier than the last. The pregnancy, impossible and relentless, consumed her body, twisting spine and shoulders into unnatural angles, muscles straining, joints screaming with agony. Sleep became a memory, fragmented, fleeting, nightmares intruding at every moment of rest. The walls of her home seemed to shrink, suffocating her, echoes of laughter from past arrogance, replaced by groans, whispers of dread that no eye could see. Each night, the unborn creature shifted violently, thumping, twisting, thrashing, producing noises unrecognizable, sounds that clawed at sanity, reverberating against ribs and organs like a trapped beast. Doctors, frustrated and bewildered, examined her repeatedly, shaking their heads in disbelief, offering remedies that failed, reassurance that faltered, explanations that dissolved under the weight of reality. She screamed in rooms empty of understanding, her voice carrying through corridors, bouncing off ceilings, leaving only silence and fear behind. Johnson, patient for years, now moved with cautious despair, walking around her like a man navigating a battlefield, offering soft words, light touches, small comforts that barely registered against the roar of her suffering. He tried pleading, begging for acknowledgement, for submission to reason, but Angela snapped, denying pain, denying weakness, clinging to arrogance as armor. Isolation became a permanent companion. Even Johnson, devoted and patient, could only do so much, growing weary, frustration simmering beneath composed exterior. Conversations dwindled, meals passed silently, footsteps echoed emptily across hallways. Shadows, once background details, now seemed to follow her, bend around her, whisper and shift with a life of their own. She moved through rooms as though trapped inside a different reality, where every object, every sound, every glance carried judgment, accusation, anticipation. Nighttime brought the worst terror. The creature inside thrashed, kicked, bucked violently, sometimes producing sounds that were animal, sometimes something wholly other, something impossible to name. Angela screamed into pillows, clawed at walls, pressed faces into blankets, wept into empty rooms. The air itself seemed charged, vibrating with the weight of the curse, heavy with unseen energy. Sleep became brief, rare, haunted by visions of twisted forms, shadows moving, whispers carried by wind and walls, reminders that defiance had consequences. Every moment awake carried humiliation, fear, agony. Every sound of villagers talking, children playing, birds calling outside became a reminder. She was no longer part of the world she had dominated. She existed separate, isolated by pride, alienated by arrogance, trapped in a body betraying her in ways medical science could not explain. Desperation finally crept into her mind like a tidal wave, unstoppable, overwhelming. Pride wavered under the relentless pounding of pain, humiliation, and unexplainable terror. Nights stretched endlessly, each one echoing with violent motion inside, days following suit in unbroken agony. Rumors of strange noises from her compound traveled through the village, whispers of curses, prophecies, judgment spreading quickly, reaching ears of elders, women, men, children, who dared not approach but spoke in hushed tones. Angela's mind, previously fortified with arrogance, began to crack, cracks forming under pressure, widening with each violent twist inside her abdomen. She noticed her reflection in mirrors, walls, water, eyes wide, jaw clenched, cheeks hollowed by years of suffering. Johnson watched helplessly, touching, speaking, trying to anchor her in reality, but the distance grew, invisible, insurmountable. Only when a messenger from a distant woman arrived, inviting her to a powerful deliverance church, did Angela pause. For the first time, hesitation flickered across her face, a pause almost unnoticeable, yet profound. Could help exist outside her pride? Could relief be found beyond arrogance? The words of Uka returned, faint echoes carried across 5 torturous years. What you carry will teach you humility. The first trace of doubt, terror, and recognition combined into a single, trembling thought. Perhaps, just perhaps, she had ignored forces far stronger than herself. The church loomed large, white walls glowing under the afternoon sun, shadows stretching across the ground as villagers whispered warnings outside its gates. Angela stepped hesitantly onto the polished floor, her swollen body trembling, each movement a testament to 5 years of relentless suffering. Johnson followed quietly, hand gripping hers, eyes scanning the crowd nervously, reflecting both fear and desperation. Inside, the congregation had already gathered, eyes wide, murmurs humming like a vibrating chord of anticipation. Candles flickered, smoke curling toward high ceilings, incense mingling with tension, every element charged with energy that seemed to thrum in the very air. Angela's heart pounded violently, each beat syncing with the subtle, sinister rhythm she had carried inside her womb for years. The pastor, tall, commanding, eyes blazing with authority, approached her slowly, hand raised in blessing, voice deep, resonant, echoing off stone walls. Child of pride, bearer of arrogance, you have mocked life, derided weakness, and scorned mercy. Today, judgment and deliverance converge. Angela laughed nervously, trying to suppress fear, masking terror with her usual defiance, but a small shiver ran down her spine. The congregation, sensing power beyond comprehension, leaned forward, some gripping pews, others pressing palms together, murmuring silent prayers for courage, for protection, for understanding. Labor struck suddenly, violently, as though summoned by the collective energy surrounding her. Angela screamed, body arching, back straining against invisible forces, legs buckling under impossible weight. Pain unlike anything known tore through her, a mixture of flesh, spirit, and something unearthly, ripping clarity from mind, scattering thought, leaving only raw, screaming awareness. Johnson clutched her hands, knuckles whitening, voice hoarse from attempts at calm reassurance, but the grip of terror rendered words meaningless. The pastor shouted prayers, commanding, invoking forces that none but he could perceive, hands raised, eyes blazing with conviction. Congregation members trembled, some falling to knees, others covering mouths to stifle gasps, all feeling the invisible storm pressing outward, vibrating floors, rattling doors, reverberating through bones. Angela's belly twisted, thrashed, rotated with strength that seemed impossible, unnatural, monstrous. She screamed into the polished floors, nails tearing through fabric, teeth clenched, every breath a struggle against forces she could neither name nor resist. Angela clawed at the polished wood, dragged herself across carpeted floors, sweat glistening, hair plastered to her face, tears streaming, mixture of fear, pain, terror, disbelief, humiliation, and revelation flashing across eyes wide with horror. Johnson, caught between helplessness and devotion, whispered encouragements, soft prayers, desperate affirmations, but none could penetrate the storm consuming her. The pastor's voice rose, louder, commanding, stronger, invocations twisting into shrill crescendos, calling forth every ounce of unseen authority, every measure of spiritual might, his words slicing the tension, carving paths through invisible energy, reaching the core of the unnatural force residing in her womb. Then, moments stretched impossibly, a suspended eternity, and the culmination approached. Angela's body convulsed violently, screams tearing from throat raw and exhausted, limbs flailing, back arching in impossible angles, abdomen pulsing with unimaginable intensity. Congregation members gasped, fainted, fell to knees, some pressed hands to ears, unable to endure the auditory assault, eyes wide, breath suspended, hearts racing beyond control. Johnson collapsed beside her, clutching her trembling form, tears streaking his face, voiceless with horror, eyes reflecting absolute disbelief. Angela, screaming, writhing, utterly stripped of pride, confronted by forces beyond her comprehension, was poised at the threshold between human endurance and supernatural reckoning. Then, with a force that shattered expectation, that defied comprehension, that obliterated hope for normalcy, Angela's body delivered the impossible. A goat, small yet perfect, alive yet bearing the unmistakable mark of unnatural origin, squirming, bleeding, hooves striking the polished floor. The congregation erupted, chaos ripping through the air, screams blending with gasps, people scattering, fainting, falling, some freezing in petrified awe, others fleeing as if pursued by judgment itself. Johnson collapsed beside Angela, body trembling, tears streaking cheeks, unable to speak, unable to comprehend, unable to process what defiance, pride, and years of arrogance had birthed. Angela lay on the floor, body heaving, sweat-drenched, eyes wide, mind fragmented, staring at the creature that had emerged as a living testament to warnings ignored, advice rejected, humility denied. Candles flickered around them, shadows twisting violently, smoke coiling unpredictably, reflecting the unnatural energy saturating the room. The pastor shouted prayers, voice ringing like thunder, commanding, rebuking, invoking forces far beyond ordinary perception, calling judgment down, calling release forth, but the intensity did not abate. The goat, small and trembling, stared with eyes that seemed to reflect both innocence and accusation, bleeding loudly, reverberating, echoing across the church, through walls, into the streets outside, carrying the sound of supernatural decree. Villagers outside, drawn by the commotion, paused, some running, some frozen mid-step, hearing only the impossible cries, sensing the wrath, feeling the weight of judgment from a distance. The goat died immediately, a sudden, brutal confirmation of the curse's finality. Silence crashed afterward, deafening, heavy, suffocating, leaving space for realization to settle like ash on every mind. Angela lay still, trembling violently, body exhausted, mind shattered, soaked in sweat, racked with pain, haunted by echoes of the cries, the thumps, the impossible rhythm she had carried for years. Johnson held her, shaking, whispering words that made no sense, fragments of comfort, fragments of disbelief, fragments of love that barely penetrated the storm inside her. Congregation members, now cautiously returning, stared, some weeping, others kneeling, mouths open, eyes wide, witnessing both punishment and miracle simultaneously. Candles, now steady, illuminated faces drained of color, shadows stretching long and distorted, reflecting every emotion, fear, awe, reverence, guilt, relief, and horror. Smoke lingered, thick and oppressive, curling slowly toward the heavens, a visible marker of the unnatural, the supernatural, the judgment exacted and confirmed. Angela, exhausted, trembling, shivering, felt the weight of years collapse onto her, humiliation wrapping her like a heavy cloak, pride evaporated, arrogance reduced to raw awareness of frailty, mortality, consequences undeniable. The pastor, breathing heavily, voice lowered but firm, declared judgment aloud, echoing across walls, into hearts, cementing the moral. This was born of arrogance, cruelty, mockery, pride, and defiance. Let it serve as warning. Those who elevate themselves above mercy, laughter, and humanity shall face consequences beyond imagination. None escape the law of balance. None escape humility. Angela, eyes wide, body shivering, chest heaving, finally understood. The old woman's words echoed, once ignored, now crystal clear. What you carry will teach you humility. Johnson, still holding her, pressed her head to his chest, tears dripping onto her hair, eyes reflecting both relief and sorrow, unable to offer words sufficient to erase years of torment. Villagers outside, observing from a distance, whispered prayers, awe, and caution, carrying the story forward, knowing the tale would spread, become legend, a warning across communities. Angela survived physically, but her spirit carried the burden indefinitely, a living testament to pride punished, to arrogance corrected, to human defiance meeting supernatural force. The goat, now gone, left silence, emptiness, and reflection in its place. A lasting mark of judgment, a story that would never fade, a lesson burned into memory, unforgettable, unyielding, viral in its horror, and eternal in its moral. Weeks turned into months, but the echoes of humiliation remained embedded in Angela's body, mind, and spirit. She moved differently, spoke differently, thought differently. Pride no longer dictated actions. Arrogance had been extinguished by experience impossible to ignore, cruelty replaced gradually by caution, mockery replaced by reflection, confidence tempered with understanding of forces beyond comprehension. Johnson stood by unwaveringly, offering guidance, patience, love, while Angela absorbed lessons taught with unbearable precision. Villagers, once fearful, now regarded her with cautious respect, aware that punishment had been exacted fully visible for all to witness, invisible in ways only she could feel, lingering inside her bones, nerves, mind, spirit. The story traveled beyond the church, beyond the village, across communities, whispered along marketplaces, shared beside fires, repeated in hushed tones as a warning to those who elevated themselves above mercy, compassion, or humility. Angela survived physically, but her soul remained scarred. Her life marked forever, a living testament that arrogance invites consequences, cruelty demands repayment, and pride, no matter how justified in eyes of self, can summon forces that transform existence entirely. Every step she took afterward, every word she spoke, every interaction she navigated carried weight of lesson indelible, unforgettable, viral in its warning, and eternal in moral significance, ensuring that no tongue, no mind, no heart could disregard it without risk. Thank you so much, my Folktales family, for watching till the end of this powerful story. Your love, comments, and support keep the spirit of African storytelling alive. If you enjoyed this tale, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Folktales by Sophie J, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to give you a shout out in my next video. Till next time, keep believing in the magic of our stories.